flu, smallpox, measles, plague. The subject with the highest death rate in human history is commonly known as a virus. What a fascinating personality the voice managed to get. And then about who this person decided to become a virus, the rest depended on this person. The next moment, an artisanal rat was discovered. Attachment to the cell membrane. Intrusion into the host through the nostrils. At that moment, the thing that created the voice dropped to the ground and touched the rat. And then the invasion of the cellular cells and fusion with the membrane begins. The shell was successfully dropped. The invasion of the cell nucleus has been carried out. Creation of an RNA compound. The RNA sequence has been successfully copied. The preparation for the cure was completed. At that moment, the rat lying on the ground was spinning from the fact that the infection had successfully entered its body. And it was possible to have control over the body. Looking at the bushes in front of him, the voice thought that he had a headache and tried to figure out why he was outside. His field of vision was also a little out of order. There was a puddle of water in front of him. And then, looking at himself in this puddle, the voice realized that it was a rat. But then he realized that it wasn't really a rat, but it was himself, not understanding why he looked like that. If the hero remembered correctly, he was in the office. The next moment, something passed by him. The rat, hiding, did not understand what it was. After all, he had never seen a plant attack birds, let alone a bird with 3 legs. The next moment, he couldn't believe that he was in a completely different world. Then he remembered that he was working at his pharmaceutical company. As usual, after everyone returned home, he just borrowed the lab for a while. The young man was working with his research and his memories stopped there. In other words, he must have died after making some mistake. Then our hero suddenly opened his eyes. Seeing an empty white space in front of him and a goddess spinning something like a roulette wheel. The girl said that in the next life our hero will become a virus because that's what she said, the young man recalled. And, in other words, he has now taken control of this body himself by infecting the rat. It's absurd for a scientist like him to believe in goddesses, given his current predicament. He must have been reincarnated, however, to think that he was the owner of a lab rat and that it was karma. He was thinking that he needed to understand what he could do and what he was capable of while he was in such a body. Then a friend, smelling the smell, saw red particles, and the young man realized that he had seen the virus inside his body. Looking at these particles, he realized that each of them was a part of him. Thinking that if he can take control of the rat's eyes, then maybe he can use something else. The next moment, exhaling, the young man focused, and he successfully changed his field of view to the virus. Looking at the blood vessels, he thought that it looked like red blood cells. He thought it would be bad if he was found by white blood cells. He could get out of here. Then he saw the cell membrane and thought about using it. Then a friend saw what looked like a tumor that was popping out of the cage. The next moment, a bunch of his parts were born from the cells, and the young man thought that it was a pretty disgusting sight. Swimming up to one of them, our hero asked if this cell was also talking. But he thought about the fact that it seems only he had his own will. The young man could not understand why only he had a mind, because he was supposed to command, probably, this huge army of viruses. And I thought about how they would react to orders. The next moment, he was shouting that they all had to follow him. Frightened by his own voice, he thought that somehow many of them had come together, they could be controlled from a certain distance, our hero thought, walking ahead of everyone. But still, having consciousness, the collective action of the virus in modern common sense, is not applicable here. Understanding the limits of this ability seems quite difficult, even for a scientist like himself. Then a friend heard that some voice was determining the skills that the young man possessed, and he discovered that he had the skills and powers of infection. The skill of domination and reproduction was also discovered. After hearing all this, our hero could not understand what kind of message he had heard. The power of infection, reproduction and dominance were probably his abilities after infecting the rat. It multiplied inside the body and was able to control the host's body. In this case, it should prevail over the host with high vitality. In addition to this, the complete infestation of the bush rat recorded skills, as well as cowardice and perception of danger, on its Rena. The hero thought about the fact that probably, cowardice is the perception of danger. These were the skills of this rat. It was recorded on Rena, which means that he could copy the skills of this rat by infecting it quite strongly. And it turns out that the more living creatures the hero infects, the larger his set. Riding along the road, our hero laughed, thinking that if it was true, then everything was getting very exciting. After all, he had never seen an organism develop so quickly in the modern world. Depending on how you use this ability, you can even become a sinister living being in the story. He had to confirm it immediately. The next moment, he hovered next to the flower, thinking that maybe his abilities also affect plants. After trying to try, he dropped his particles on the plant. The computer reported that the skill of relieving heat and also relieving pain had been obtained. Our hero joyfully realized that it worked on plants as well. Relieving heat and relieving pain, these are skills and quite convenient, but then suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by the wind, which began to make noise. And the next moment our hero looked forward and saw a secondary infection on another plant. Thinking about what abilities he might get next time, the young man wondered. Looking into the plants, he realized that the message about gaining skills had not surfaced. Perhaps his infectious ability is too weak to acquire skills through secondary infections. He had to investigate this in more detail. At this moment, looking into the plant that had teeth, it tried to eat it, and our hero jumped back in time. This scared him very much because our hero was still in a weak rat, but it is not unlikely that there is unimaginable potential behind it. After all, it is obvious that smallpox spread on Earth as a human disease about 10,000 years ago, but in this world he will spread it himself. The guy who worked for therapeutic agents against viruses eventually became a virus. This is probably just what he needed anyway. He was bored in his previous life. If he continues to increase his viral abilities in this world, he will be able to become the source of a new pandemic and ensure complete domination. It was still unknown if there were people in this world at all. At that moment, he was informed that the danger perception skill had been activated. Our hero shuddered and then saw the drops, realizing that a chill ran down his back. At that moment, he saw the threat that loomed over him. It was a wolf. Flashing his eyes, he looked at the rat, and it slowly turned away thinking that it was very bad. After all, if he didn't run away quickly, then he was in trouble. The cowardice skill was also activated at this moment. Our hero thought that this simply could not be, it was not the time to activate this skill. After all, in a place like this, his life would end like a virus. At that moment, the wolf ate our hero, who was a rat. The god that was watching him thought that the young man who chose the virus was not, perhaps he was chosen to become a virus. At this moment, she was carefully looking at the ball, which reflected the muzzle of the wolf that had recently eaten our hero. Looking at our hero, many discussed him and leaving work they saw that the young man. Many people knew that our hero had said something about researching a new type of virus, and of course people understood that it was probably not completely safe. The young man was considered rather clumsy and uncommunicative, and that it was better not to mess with him, of course. At that moment, these were memories from his past world. He was finally reborn, so he asked not to force him to remember the past, and then thought about what he was doing in the new world at all. And then he remembered that he had been eaten by this wolf along with his carrier rat. Even if he was reborn into an amazing virus, would his life end right here? The young man wondered while he was inside the wolf. Thinking about what if he were to be reborn as a human again, only to go to the same humiliating job and end up like this. Thinking that he would not die so easily. The next moment, the wolf regurgitated after eating the rat. And our hero screamed from the mouth of the wolf and reported that he forced him to do it. At that moment, the infection power skill and all its virus clones that were eaten by the wolf were activated. It was an order to spread through the wolf's body, through the blood vessels. They will take it upon themselves. Also use wolf cells to multiply their number. The breeding skill was activated. Giving orders, the young man understood that the wolf would not be able to stop them. At that moment, the wolf felt that something was wrong with him. He began to shake. Our hero thought that the wolf was completely infected, and the time had come and the dominance skill was activated. The skill dexterity, endurance and ferocity has been acquired. Our hero was thinking that the messages seemed to come from outside, plus the review was now bigger than before. Then he thought about the stench from his mouth and couldn't figure out if it was from him. But still, in the end, he enjoyed the taste, which means he successfully captured the wolf. Our hero was very happy and wagged his tail thinking that his last resort would really succeed. However, it was a grand discovery. Even if its host dies, if it manages to infect another organism, it will survive. Thinking that it could only be called eternal youth and longevity, it would not be an exaggeration. Running forward, the young man thought that it was just amazing and that he had to find other organisms and immediately infect them. As he ran, he thought that it was nevertheless very difficult to meet other living beings. And then the young man realized that there were actually a lot of living creatures around, but none of them dared to approach him. Does this mean that this wolf was actually at a high level? After all, he felt full of energy compared to when he was a rat. But it's still boring to be a creature from his past world, with some changes in appearance. Looking at the goblins in the forest, our hero thought that he would prefer to be someone else's more unique, for example, some kind of fantasy creature. For example, like dragons or goblins, would suit him. At that moment, he just noticed them, the goblins, who were fighting at the bottom of the cliff on which our hero was standing. Looking at them carefully, the young man wondered about himself. Was this really happening to him in reality, looking at the goblins? He thought about how comparatively small they were, just like fantasy novels. The young man wondered if this world was connected with the idea of the fantasy worlds of his previous life. As he went down to the goblins, the young man thought about whatever this new species was, which no one would ever see in his past world. He's going to capture those goblins anyway. Then he stopped abruptly, thinking that only this could not happen again, because the guys were too persistent and the voice was speaking. Our hero, hearing this voice, decided to stop in front of the goblins. Then I saw that there was a girl standing there, and she shouted to them that even though she was a beginner, she was still an adventurer. She couldn't be defeated here. At that moment, she was standing with her sword, ready to fight against the goblins. And our hero, looking at her, realized that he had finally seen a man. To the next moment, one of the goblins rushed at the girl and defending with a sword, she was able to deflect his blow. At that moment, she was breathing very heavily. Our hero realized that the goblins had started attacking her. But judging by her appearance, she is not from modern society. Not only does she have worn out equipment, but she's also exhausted. On the other hand, the goblins were still very energetic. The young man thought to himself that this was an ideal situation for him. Flashing his gaze, he carefully looked at what was happening ahead. After all, now that he had confirmed the existence of humans, a human body was needed for his future research. First, you had to get goblin skills. Then, without wasting time, it was not necessary to take possession of the person. Until they and their clones did this, it was also necessary to try a combination of rat skill, agility and wolf skill, ferocity. Having done this, it turned out to be a wolf with the abilities of a rat. Turning to his clones, our hero suggested that they immediately try it. He is cold-blooded and felt light, perhaps this is the effect of ferocity. At that moment, while he was running, the goblins began to attack the girl again, and she couldn't defend herself any worse. With tears in her eyes, she put out her sword. But at that moment, our hero, being a wolf, was able to defeat one of the goblins by biting him. The short temper skill was acquired. The goblin was lying on the ground trying to breathe, but it was impossible. At that moment, the girl couldn't believe that there was a big gray wolf in front of her. The wolf was thinking that it tasted just awful. The goblin, realizing that one of them was already dead, began to attack the wolf. But the wolf did not feel tired and was able to fight the goblin that was right in front of him because he was not at all like the 30-year-old scientist he was in the last world. A new night vision skill was obtained. And at that moment, everyone was suddenly looking at our hero. The girl even fell, thinking that it was not just a gray wolf. The goblin had already run away from him in horror and even threw away his weapon. At that moment, our hero began to spread the virus, thinking that it would be troublesome if he approached a person during a chase. Maybe he could just infect him and take away his abilities. The skill agility was obtained and it sounded very universal, the young man thought after hearing about this skill. But now he decided to turn to the girl. He looked at her intently as he walked towards her. The girl, seeing that the wolf was coming in her direction, asked not to approach her, being scared and holding her face in her hands. But our hero only smelled it. And surprised, the girl did not understand why the wolf did not want to eat her. The young man understood that even if the girl was exhausted and not so injured, he could use her body. But he stopped and thought about it. At this moment, the girl was looking very attentively at the wolf, who was behaving very strangely. Our hero thought that now he knew almost nothing about this world. What if their medical knowledge had advanced? Then the infection of this girl can lead to its detection and destruction. But he was thinking that he shouldn't have taken hasty action until he knew more about this world. But the human body is perfect for gathering information. The girl, seeing that the wolf had turned away and was thinking about something, asked if he was going to eat her. Howling a little, the young man asked her to wait a bit because he was thinking about it right now. Then the girl, seeing that the wolf was not dangerous, rushed into his arms, asking if by chance he was not sleeping with her now from dangers and thanked him. At that moment, the wolf jumped away from the girl because he did not expect this at all, like the girl, asking about what happened to the baby. She asked him not to be afraid to come right up to her, opening his arms to the wolf. Our hero, trembling, thought about what was wrong with this careless stupid creature. After all, it was some kind of strange and unexpected reaction for him. It was all thanks to Wolf-san. The girl thought she could dodge after reading a book about fencing. She thought she would be fine. She didn't think it would be so hard in a real fight. Then another goblin came and attacked her. Do experts really take such circumstances into account at all? Because the most amazing thing is their achievement. The girl was talking to the wolf. They were really good because he had to train every day because he was surviving in a dangerous place. The girl was sitting opposite our hero, who was a wolf, and chatting with him. The same one said nothing and studied the girl carefully. Then she went on to explain that she really likes to eat delicious food. It was difficult for her to find a similar one in the forest, but the fact is that the food they ate tastes bad and that it differs from people's food preferences. Our hero, watching her closely and trying to figure out how long the girl plans to talk exactly like this, so here are the animals. He thought to himself that he could not understand if all the people of this world were the same as this girl. At this moment, the wolf yawned because our hero thought that he could hear important information about this world, but all she does is talk nonsense. Looking at the girl, our hero thought. Note that the wolf yawns and the girl apologized to him. And in the end, she talked too much. Then she decided that it was necessary to start with her. Introducing herself, the girl explained that she was the adventurer Elena and smiled at the wolf. Bowing to him, she thanked the animal for saving her earlier. When he heard about the adventurer, our hero thought that she had finally said something useful. And from the knowledge of his previous life, the young man could say that adventurers receive rewards by defeating monsters, collecting medicinal herbs and so on. It was a very dangerous job. Why would a young girl do such a job alone? Our hero wondered. The girl explained that she became an adventurer 2 weeks ago, but it seems she has no talent for it, she said. And even the goblins, who occupy the lowest rank among the monsters, were too strong for her. They did not resist her attacks. They are probably one of the weakest. If so, then this little girl was very weak, the hero thought, looking at the girl. The girl went on to explain that everyone in the Adventurers Guild ignored her, so she ended up becoming a loner, sadly explaining to the wolf. Our hero thought that if a girl wanted to become stronger, you can try to strengthen her with viral abilities. It will be an interesting experiment. At that moment, the girl stretched out her hand to our hero, so grabbing his muzzle the next moment and lifting it, the girl kissed him on the nose. Addressing Wolf-sama, saying that he was her first partner. It's been a long time since she talked to anyone. She couldn't stop talking and was too excited. Feeling the girl's kiss on him, the wolf fell, thinking that it was too close. The same one, looking at the wolf, could not understand what was happening to him. Our hero reflected that it was very close, and in the previous world he would certainly have been prosecuted. We imagined an article that read about a 30-year-old reborn man, self-proclaimed. He thought it would be good, since this world was different. After all, in fact, this man's brain was a flower garden. Looking at the girl, the young man thought while she wailed that it was very bad and apologized to the wolf. And since it gets dangerous after sunset, she had to get back to the city as soon as possible. At that moment, our hero came closer to her, and the girl was surprised and reported that she was very reluctant to leave, but she had to go home. Our hero went along with her thinking that he is still holding this girl, and the priority is to know where she lives. Seeing that the wolf went with her, the girl smiled. She asked if he was really seeing her off, because he was very nice and was such a gentleman. The wolf was walking along the path with the girl. She explained that before becoming an adventurer, she worked in the field in her village. Since it was a small village, everyone had lived as a family for as long as she could remember. But her village was destroyed by goblins, but everyone escaped safely, so everything was fine. The wolf listened attentively to the girl, who continued to say that since the village was in ruins and could not withstand another raid, they had to move to a new land. That's why she cried earlier. But the next moment, gathering her strength, the girl explained that she would not give up on becoming an adventurer. She will become strong enough to protect everyone in her village. Rubbing her fists and proudly reported that even if she looked weak, she worked a lot in the field where strength was needed. The wolf listened to her and did not know what to answer her because he could not answer in general. He began to think about his past life in his mind. Our hero reflected that he also strongly wanted to invent a cure for people in his former world. But he got so carried away with it that people started treating him like an oddball. Therefore, our hero began to hate people. Remembering all this, the young man was a little upset. Even though this girl was also an outcast, she continued to move forward. The next moment, while the girl was moving through the forest, she pointed ahead, explaining to the wolf that they had finally come. Smiling, she explained that this was where she lived. The next moment, a city appeared in front of our hero, along with towers towering above it, and it was the city of Faust. Upon seeing the city, the young man was very surprised, or rather not the young man himself, but the wolf and the body he was in. The girl at that moment, scratching her head, asked the wolf if this city seemed big to her, but she still did not remember the way back she spoke there. Looking at the city, the young man realized that it was much bigger than he expected. After all, he had never seen such devices in his life that were in the city. Therefore, he reflected that, as he had previously thought, it would be foolhardy to simply infect people. The girl sadly, addressing the wolf-san, explained that no matter how much she wanted to invite him to the hotel as a thank you, she could not do it. The wolf understood that a monster entering the city would cause trouble, so he tried to show his paws so that the girl could not worry about it. And she just walked, and he would go his own way. The girl, waving to our hero, said goodbye to the wolf-san, saying that she would never forget his kindness. After all, she was sure that someday they would meet again. Looking at the happy girl, our hero just barked, and she started waving at him. Looking at the road along which she was walking away, the girl of our hero was visited by sadness, so she left. He thought that he had not talked to anyone for a long time. Well, if she plans to become an adventurer, perhaps they will meet again. Turning around and leaving, our hero thought. At that moment, he wondered if he himself could have become an adventurer. After all, they get the opportunity to travel the world and meet a variety of creatures. It was a great opportunity to improve their skills and get even more of them. Looking at the wolf's body, he thought that this body was his biggest problem. After all, he needed an indispensable and healthy body. He could not infect Lena and impersonate her because she talked too much. Anyone who knows her will definitely notice something is wrong. Then our hero thought about the fact that he could infect an unidentified corpse. But he absolutely did not want to even think about it because he did not even know if the corpses could move. As he walked to his seat, he wondered who else he could have infected. At that moment, he again saw a crowd of goblins standing at the bottom of the cliff on which our hero was moving. He thought that although he would get new skills, his main priority was to acquire a human body. At the same time, meeting people in the forest was still a quest, but then he thought about people and humanoid monsters. Looking at the goblins in front of him, the young man thought that he just needed to capture a goblin, put on a mask or hood, and impersonate a human. To then enter the city thinking that he could try it. Looking at the goblins that our hero noticed, there were 5, if not surrounded, then everything can go to waste. Then suddenly, looking at these very goblins, the young man saw that one goblin had already been infected, and he realized that it was the one who escaped, whom he infected when he saved Lena. Since his clones had penetrated his body, he decided to do something else. Therefore, the first thing that came to our hero's mind was that he had to immediately own the body of this goblin. But then I thought about how to get him under control. After all, he was able to capture the wolf being one with the mouse. So I wondered if he should have deliberately let them eat him. But he wouldn't really want to go through that again. Of course, there was nothing to be done, but if you think about it, when he first arrived here, he was able to change his view of the virus by focusing enough. After all, every virus is a part of him, and in this case, can he move his consciousness to a virus that infects another organism? Therefore, he decided to focus on the goblin that stood in front of him and on his clones inside that goblin. Using a trick, he was able to penetrate the goblin's body. Already looking through his eyes, the young man understood that he had succeeded. Looking at the goblins, he wondered if everything had gone well, because at that moment his companions were looking at him with a rather strange look. When he was a virus, he didn't think much about it, but looking at the goblins from the angle he was looking at now, it seemed to our hero that they looked quite creepy. Then suddenly the goblin turned to him. The young man shuddered, thinking that he had really done something wrong. Approaching Dublin, another goblin informed him to give him the bag. Looking at the goblin that came up to him, our hero in horror gave him the bag and thanked his brother only for taking it away. Although these were just basic words, he could understand their language. That's because he's probably got his brain under control. At that moment, the other goblins reported that the wolf had attacked him. It was terrible, and the goblin girl, approaching our hero, handed him grass, explaining that it calms the mind, so he could eat it. Taking the grass from the girl, our hero began to chew it. Standing next to him, she asked him to take his time. At that moment, the young man allowed the thought that the goblins were very kind. Then, looking at the wolf, the young man thought that it reminded him of what happened to this animal. And looking at him, once again the young man realized that the wolf looked confused. After he let go, his original consciousness would probably come back to him. The wolf turned around and looked closely at the goblin and then began to growl so that the goblin was scared. The next moment, he warned everyone that there was a wolf and that they needed to run away faster, but it was too late because the wolf rushed straight towards them. While they were trying to escape, our hero thought that it would be very difficult for them to run with such legs. In that case, he decided that it was necessary to activate the endurance skill and combine it with agility. The next moment, when our hero tried to catch him and bite him, the young man was able to jump away and escape from his opponent. Jumping high on a cliff, all the goblins thought that they had probably been saved. After all, the wolf was barking from below this rock, unhappy that he could not catch his prey. The goblins eventually escaped from the wolf. Everyone was very happy, and our hero thought that they were so simple because it was all thanks to him. However, the significance of the fact that its symptoms can manifest in other infected creatures is a huge step forward. This can be applied in many situations to follow the gang in order to adapt to it. It was also quite interesting, and the young man thought about it. And he thought to himself that his companions should have worshipped his endurance. At that moment, one of the goblins shouted that he was still full of stamina and energy, so they could keep moving towards the house. Here our heroes came to the cave. One of them reported that they had returned and were greeted by an elder. Our hero noticed that they used caves as nests, however, their situation was deplorable. Most of them do not finish eating, wearing only a loincloth. Turning to the boss, everyone said that it was a very small prey, that he would probably get angry. The next moment, after hearing about the boss, the young man was trying to figure out who it was. Then a giant goblin appeared in front of them and, addressing Goblin Sama, they explained that they had returned. To which the disgruntled boss said that his subordinates were late. Looking at the boss, our hero thought that he looked like a creepy goblin the size of a man. Is this the one they call the hobgoblin? Looking at what they had brought, the boss was trying to figure out if it was all the loot. The goblins explained that this was all they could find because the orcs were stealing goblin loot and there was nothing left. The boss reported that then his subordinates had to go attack human villages. Looking at the boss, our hero thought that really he couldn't do it himself. After all, the goblins explained that humans were very strong and they couldn't win. Our hero was thinking at that moment that with such a body, there would be no problems with entering the city. The green skin can be hidden under clothes, it is obvious that he has more vitality than goblins. At that moment, the Goblin King hit one of them on the head, asking if the goblin had thought about why he was still alive. And tapping on his head with his foot, he explained that the goblin in front of him was a useless rabble and that he was hungry. Our hero could not stand it and turning to the goblin, he talked about finding food himself. After hearing this, the boss did not expect anyone to go against him. Upon hearing that the goblin was unhappy, our hero thought that his opponent had taken the bait. Therefore, he decided to explain to him that the goblin asked to go, but he was lazy, saying that he was like a spoiled child and that he was good for nothing. At that moment, the young man thought that he would infect him with his breath full of viruses. But then the system explained that resistance to the virus was detected and only a short period of time was available for infection. After hearing that the main goblin had virus resistance, our hero was clearly not ready for this. After all, no one had told him anything about it. At this moment, the goblin, reaching out to our hero, grabbed him by the head, asking if he really had the courage to go against him. Grabbing the goblin, lifting it up, the boss reported that this place would not last long because of the orcs. Our hero, kicking in his arms, thought that no one could have known that the time required for infection differs depending on the purpose. Our hero prayed that the infection would happen faster because he understood that at that second he could say goodbye to his life. The next moment, there was a crunch, and the boss announced that this goblin was no longer needed and that he would leave this place. At this moment, the process of reproduction began inside the host's body. The boss reported that all the other goblins here would be eaten by orcs. At that moment, the capture of the hobgoblin was successfully carried out. Our hero reported that he would devour the goblin before that. After releasing our hero, who was still in the little goblin recently, the hobgoblin began to behave strangely, and everyone was watching it closely. And then exhaling, he smiled at everyone in such a way that everyone was shocked by his behavior. Goblin explained that he had thought so until today, but he changed his mind because they were all friends and offered to get along. At that moment, he was informed to get the brute force and sharp claws skill, as well as the endurance skill. Our hero was just happy to hear this because all these skills looked useful in battle, and he did not expect anything less from the leader of the pack. Then suddenly someone interrupted his thoughts with cries of alarm. One of the goblins reported that there were orcs outside, pointing to the exit and looking ahead, everyone saw the giant orcs that stood in front of the entrance. The orcs, smiling, reported that this land was theirs and suggested that the goblin get out of here. Our hero, looking at the orcs who were right in front of him, thought that the difference in strength was too great. Our hero thought to himself that it wasn't that he didn't understand the hobgoblins' feelings, but before they captured him under normal conditions, they would have left those guys behind. Of course, if he didn't have the infecting ability. Looking at so many living organisms in front of him, not only could the young man increase his skills and control, it was also an ideal training for all his various abilities. He also thought about himself that it would be awkward and difficult, then he could always escape with the help of dexterity. Looking at the goblins who were standing behind him, our hero realized that these goblins were very scared and that they were just useless. And he thought about the fact that he needed to play the role of an inspiring leader because they had to get excited after his inspiring speech. Our hero began spreading his viruses on them, as well as saying parting words to cheer up his army. The goblin was telling everyone else to listen to him carefully, telling them all that they were strong and asked them to support him with their strength so that they would not be cowards and had to defend their home with all their might. After talking for a while, the young man thought that his words should have clearly reached the goblins. After that, he activated stamina, agility, brute strength and agility. And it looks like his infection can activate all useful skills at the same time. He thought that these skills would be enough for now. At that moment, the crackling started and the goblins began to grow. And the next moment, giant goblins appeared in front of our hero. Looking at these changes, the young man realized that they were more than impressive. More than he imagined, thinking that maybe this was the effect of the force, he was now sure that they would suspect something. The goblins shouted that they had become strong from the hobgoblin's support, even the body had become large, they had amazing sensations at the same time. Our hero, listening to them, thought that thank God they were simpletons. And turning around, he thought that it was necessary to start a large-scale experiment first. After his rebirth, the goblins stood against the orcs, who were trying to figure out what was already happening. After all, this body-strengthening magic must have been there. But the goblins just couldn't change like that, but the orc's second partner said he doubted he wouldn't be smart enough to do it. Our hero thought that now they were equal not only in numbers, but also in physical strength, along with the bodies that stood against them. New symptoms have been discovered: stealth, evasion, fatigue, exhaustion and infirmity. Our hero, thinking that so many symptoms would come after he infected the goblins with it. In the next moment, more new symptoms were discovered: hunger, anemia, resourcefulness, excellent strategist, insight. The symptoms continued to add up. Next, a short temper was discovered, which mutated, a symptom of night vision, which also mutated. Agility, and it also meant that getting duplicates would probably increase the symptoms, our hero thought. By infecting all the orcs, he will be able to get even more symptoms. In this case, it turns out that he was probably invincible. The Goblin King, standing in front of the orcs, asked about what happened to their determination, because a moment ago, they were so strong. Thinking that, probably, these pigs that were right in front of him and lost their grip. Upon hearing what the Goblin King was talking about, the orcs ran forward at him, calling him vile. Even if these goblins of his began to look different, they were still just goblins, reporting that they were not their equal. The orc pounced on the Goblin King, who in turn swung his sword over his head. The next moment orc was defeated, the goblins despite this thought that Hobgoblin-sama was better than usual. Then they realized that the orc in front of him was already knocked out. The orcs, looking at their kinsman, understood that he was killed, and the goblin was able to deal with him very quickly. Our hero wasn't worried about whether he would be able to handle the sword properly, but thanks to his agility, he would handle it pretty well. Also, instead of being afraid, he began to get excited from this battle. When they saw that the goblin had killed their kinsman, the orcs rushed forward at him, saying that this was simply unacceptable, but the next moment our hero dealt with these orcs. The symptoms were discovered: perseverance, a strengthened arm, natural regeneration, willpower, will suppression, and insanity. Listening to what the system was telling him, our friend thought that he had many wonderful symptoms. After all, orcs were, more high-class monsters than goblins, but nevertheless orcs could not be compared to them after the young man used his buffs at all. Symptoms were also discovered: physical, manipulation, recovery, fatigue and hardening. The orcs, addressing each other, were very angry because they could not cope with the goblins that were fighting against them. The next moment, one of the orcs asked to bring him the one they had caught yesterday, addressing his subordinate who was standing next to him, being shocked by the request. The subordinate shouted to the orc that they had just caught him recently and that he was still untrained. As a result, he could attack them, but the leader of the orcs shouted for his subordinate to just do it. He was very angry because it just couldn't be that an orc could lose to a goblin. The goblins fought the orcs, and new symptoms, fatigue and anemia, were received. Given that they have already been infected, they may also develop negative symptoms. Our hero thought that they had given them an even greater advantage, so he thanked the orcs to himself. However, being able to play with other creatures in this way makes him a kind of weakling, but this is a divine punishment for his greed. It would be rude to continue a fight he had already won, so he just decided to fight and end it. Then suddenly they saw a creature that was accompanied along with the rumble. Looking ahead, our hero tried to figure out what it was, not a cloud, but there was thunder. Suddenly there was a crackling sound. When this creature came up to them, they realized that it was moving through the forest. At this moment, a huge beast was making its way through the dense trees, which was held on a large chain by the orcs. There was a huge bear in front of our hero, and the young man realized that this rumble was coming directly from him. The goblins screamed because it was a thunder bear. After hearing its name, it became clear to our hero that this monster probably uses the forces of electric current. Addressing the thunder bear, the orc reported that he would attack the guys he was pointing at. Speaking of which, they were delicious, but I had to eat them all. At that moment, the thunder bear looked closely at the orc to be next to him and struck right at him. It was clear that this bear was not trained at all, thinking about what the hell it was that they saw. The power of lightning, and there was only one coal left of the orc. They hated the very essence to lose to them. The orcs were proud, the young man thought. At this moment, while he was standing on the battlefield, thinking about the situation, his companions, addressing the hobgoblin, reported that the thunder bear was the strongest here and that they needed to escape. When he heard that they had to run, our hero thought that they would not do this for anything in the world and he would never lose. Besides, this electricity looks like an interesting ability and he definitely wanted to get it. He won't run away from such a treasure. The bear may look strong, but after it infects it, a completely different story begins. Technology, as in the case of the hobgoblin. Our hero knew that the infection would take some time to take effect. Turning to his partner, our hero asked him to lend him his spear. After scratching his hand, the young man thought that it would be dangerous to get too close, so he would just smear the measles with fresh blood and then attack the thunder bear with the spear. Raising the spear and throwing it towards the bear, our hero wanted to injure him, but then the bear, seeing that the spear was flying straight at him and could hit him in the eye, closed his eyes, after which the spear simply broke. Looking at this, our hero was surprised, thinking about how durable this fur was. At that moment, the symptoms were revealed. Resistance to electricity, sharp claws, protection from blades. Our hero has acquired several symptoms. Maybe the spear did not belittle this monster, but blood certainly got into his eyes. In this case, he will direct his consciousness into his body. But then he realized that he couldn't do it. He can't sense enough viruses inside the bear to transfer. Thinking about why he couldn't do anything, was it really because of the electricity he was generating? After all, any virus that approaches it dies. The next moment, looking at the angry bear, which was already glowing with its strength, our hero realized that his opponent was approaching. The bear rushed straight at the hobgoblin, and the hobgoblin, realizing that it was very difficult for him, understood that the resistance to electricity failed to cancel out the damage caused by the bear completely. And the goblins, who had no resistance to electricity, were incinerated. The next moment, the orcs began to attack the goblins along with the bear. Our hero understood that with his current symptoms, he would not be able to save them. Our hero understood that he had to run. He had apparently become overconfident because of his abilities. But he couldn't afford to lose this body, because if he used these guys as bait, he would certainly be able to escape. At this moment, he was carefully looking at the goblins, in front of whom stood a giant bear, carefully observing what could happen to them now. And the next moment, he tried to attack the bear, realizing that the goblins were in danger. Hitting the bear right in the neck with his head, our hero could not believe that he had done something so illogical. Well, this is the moment the bear bit through our hero's hand. The goblins, seeing this, cried out, summoning the Hobgoblin-sama, who was injured by the bear. The strength was incredible and therefore, the Hobgoblin's right arm was now useless, but he was still able to fight. Looking at his bitten hand, our hero thought. As for airborne infection, the virus is killed by electricity even before it enters the body. After he threw the spear earlier, part of the virus managed to enter the bear's body, through the eyes. Our hero has acquired some skills from this. In short, it is possible that the thunder bear's electricity covers the surface of its body, but not its insides. Based on this, if his blood got into his body, then the next moment he understood everything. Then he froze with realization. At this point, as many negative symptoms as possible were activated, such as anemia, hunger, fatigue, exhaustion, and infirmity. The bear howled, and at that moment, symptoms of electric shock and absorption of electricity, resistance to shock were also received. Our hero understood that he had done this, the negative symptoms worked on the bear, and he was able to let go of his hand. A surge of symptoms, sharp claws, physical manipulation, blade protection, enhanced arms, superhuman strength. It was applied to himself. At that moment, the bear tried to use his lightning bolts again. Our hero, standing not far from him, thought that he had a lot of symptoms associated with lightning, and now the lightning of the bear had absolutely no effect on him. The next moment, our hero was able to dissect a bear that was in front of him, and they also received symptoms of generating magical power, electromagnetic discharge and rage. In the heat of battle and a sense of superiority, our hero realized that he had done it, he was not too self-confident and the strongest. The next moment, thinking to himself and caressing himself with compliments, our hero fell right in front of the rest of the goblins. Falling right in front of the goblins, they did not expect their leader to collapse unconscious. But when our hero woke up, everything returned to normal. The next moment, our hero was brought a booty, which was simply delicious, and there were many different foods in front of him. 3 days ago, there was a conflict with the Thunder Bear, since then he has been living with goblins. Obviously, now that the orcs were gone, they could collect a lot of food. And the injury that he received usually prevents a person from living a normal life. Nevertheless, in just 3 days he was able to recover, thanks to the effects of symptoms of regeneration and vitality. The symptoms he had imposed on the goblins had also been deactivated. After all, suddenly one of the people will notice their mutations, our hero thought, sitting in a cave and goblins and watching how they darted around him sweetly. The next moment, when they brought some fruit to the hobgoblin, the goblins asked him to try it because it was insanely delicious. But he said that everything was fine, they could eat it themselves. The goblins, beaming at our hero, said that they wanted the hobgoblin to eat him herself, so they asked him to try, saying that they loved the hobgoblin very much. Sitting on their throne, the goblins jumped on our hero. The same one was thinking about how much there was, or rather it was the first time that so many goblins loved him. Our hero was starting to think that spending time here as a boss wasn't so bad. Suddenly, addressing Hobgoblin-sama, the other goblins explained that they had found something strange. Our hero became interested, asking about what had already happened. However, now that our hero has become a virus, he felt like he wanted to take over everything around him. If he uses this mask, he will be able to disguise himself as a human. It was the same mask that the goblins brought to him. Taking it, our hero looked carefully at that mask because his face might not be visible in it. Chapter 6.1 The goblins, looking at our hero, asked if this was exactly what the Hobgoblin-sama wanted. A chatter started between them, and everyone was looking closely at what our hero was doing. He explained that he really wanted it. At that moment, he was pulling on gloves and the very mask that the goblins had brought him. When he was getting dressed, he thought that clothes from this world were very difficult to put on. Well, then, adjusting his helmet, he wondered if they wore it like that. The next moment, our hero presented himself in front of the scraped ones. Reporting that in the last battle, he realized that he was quite weak and went on a journey to become stronger. The goblins shouted that the hobgoblin was already strong enough and asked him not to leave them standing in the cave, surrounding our hero. The same one explained that it was also hard for him to leave them. At this moment, after all, he could never have thought that he would eventually get so used to these goblins. It's like that nostalgic feeling when you leave your dog at home. One of the goblins tearfully asked Hobgoblin-sama to take the Thunder Bear's fur because it is very durable and warm. It can be used in many ways, so I ask you to take it. Our hero tried to cheer up the goblins by saying that they were already strong and fought on a par with the orcs. Therefore, he entrusted this place to them while he was traveling and asked them to wait for him here, he would definitely return. The goblins looked at each other and then began to shout that they did not understand everything because the hobgoblin would return on her own and they were strong, so they asked not to worry about them. Our hero, coming out of their cave and turning around, explained that he was counting on these goblins. They obeyed him, looking after their master, who was leaving them. There are no more orcs, and he had enough symptoms inside these guys to avoid suspicion from humans. This will help them protect themselves. If he is ever around, he may come to check on them. At this moment, the goblins wished good luck to their leader. Walking away into the distance, our hero thought that now he is heading to the city house that Elena showed him. At that moment, he remembered how they spent their time, and even if he met the girl again, she would not recognize him in her wolf form. If he becomes an adventurer, then maybe he will have the opportunity to meet her again. The next moment, thinking about Elena and about his appearance, our hero decided to look around, thinking about whether he looked like a human at all. After all, anything is possible. He had a very suspicious outfit. But he still managed to hide his green skin. Besides, he's been practicing speaking for the last few days. At that moment, he tried to squeeze out the word hello, thinking that if it wasn't so difficult to understand, it probably was. But then, after thinking a little, our hero wondered if it was even possible to understand what he was saying. And so he began to worry about getting into the city. After all, our hero wanted to be completely sure of everything before he got to the city, but he wasn't sure he could handle it. Then his friend noticed that there was a carriage at the bottom of the cliff, and in front of it were the knights who defended the carriage. And our hero realized that this carriage was surrounded by a pack of wolves. The knights understood that there were more and more of these creatures, and it was much harder to deal with them already. The next moment, looking at the carriage, they realized that the wolves were aiming at the cargo. Then a friend of one of the wolves rushed at the knight and tried to gnaw his sword. The knight, holding his defenses, thought that they might not be able to cope with so many. At that moment, our hero arrived in time and was able to defeat the wolf, using the symptom of stealth and hitting the wolf right in the back. The knights, of course, did not have time to see who it was, then suddenly they saw our hero and asked to identify themselves. Our hero was standing nearby, thinking that it looks like stealth works great in the forest, and decided that he needed to identify himself since the knight asked him to do so. A little nervous, our hero was able to utter a greeting. The knights were a little surprised, then they also greeted him, and our hero was very happy because they were able to communicate. He explained that he was here to help them. The knights do not quite understand what our hero is saying. They tried to ask him again. He explained that this was true because he was here to help them. The only thing that bothered our hero's thoughts was whether the knights realized that he was a goblin or not. The knights, having carefully looked at our hero, thought that he was still so scared that he could not speak properly. They could not allow a man in such a state to fight, and therefore asked him to step aside as soon as possible. And the next moment they shouted at the young man to be careful because there was a wolf behind him. Turning around, he was able to deal with him with one fist, saying that the wolf annoyed him, and so that he would stop interrupting their conversation, our hero spoke after sorting it out. Those watching from the carriage thought that the young man was very strong watching the scenes that unfolded in front of him. After thinking a little, the young man realized that he had to be careful, where if his clothes were torn, they would notice his green skin. He had to develop some negative symptoms in the wolves and then eliminate them quickly. Therefore, getting up after the battle with the wolf, he decided to deal with them. At that moment, virus particles began to spray, but no one noticed it. Except for our hero. The knights at that moment said that they would also help him by rushing with swords at the wolves. But our hero asked them to wait. The next moment, the virus also got to the knights themselves. Symptoms were received. Laryngation, reflexes, kinetic vision, serenity. Our coat of arms understood that he had made a mistake and accidentally infected a person. He didn't know what to do if he didn't know how advanced medicine was in this world. But it is quite possible that if the virus is detected, it will be possible to develop a vaccine, and it will be destroyed. At this moment, our hero was trying to figure out what he needed to do, dealing with the next wolves that came running right to him. The next moment, the rest of the wolves, seeing this, began to run away, and the knights, noticing this, realized that their cargo remained safe. Therefore, we approached our hero to thank him. Approaching him, the knights reported that thanks to our hero, they were able to defeat these wolves, and that the young man fought just amazing. Looking at his hand, they said that the strength of his hands was simply inhuman, because, probably, the young man should have been a great swordsman. Therefore, they asked that, if it was not difficult, could the young man show his face, asking about what was his name, and bombarding him with questions. Here's a friend when our hero found himself in a desperate situation. A man got out of the carriage saying that our hero helped them a lot. He saw a young man in a fancy hat getting out of this carriage, saying that he didn't even know what would have happened if our hero hadn't been here, so he thanked him from the bottom of his heart, bowing to his savior. After looking at this guy, our hero was still surprised if this guy had previously been sitting in a carriage. The knights, running up to Roy-sama, asked if he was alright. To which the young man replied that everything was fine with him, thanks to all of them, the cargo was safe, and so was he. Chapter 6.2 The young man explained that when the carriage stopped, he thought that his luck was over, but it seemed that a very amazing meeting was waiting for him, which promised him good luck. Addressing our hero, the young man explained that he was a merchant of the Valkyrie Company, and his name was Roy Hard. And the aroma coming from this special custom-made meat must have attracted the wolves on the way to the city. And the escort seemed to be already exhausted from the journey, he explained. When our hero saw the merchant, he was very fascinated. At that moment, the merchant was talking a lot. Our hero thought that he has very good clothes, good posture, and his business seems to be going well. In other words, our hero thought that he had just hit the jackpot. He was thinking that he probably should have been rewarded handsomely after they arrived in the city. Meanwhile, the young man said that nevertheless, even if his knights were tired, the Grey Wolves should not have caught his faithful by surprise. Our hero said a little later that this was probably the case. The young man continued to chat, saying that, besides, the way our hero fought was like nothing else. Roy has seen many battles in his life, but this is the first time he has seen someone fight like this. Instead of recklessness, he has overwhelming confidence and the ability to back it up. Seeing his strength, he was overwhelmed with a sense of admiration, he explained. At this moment, our hero was thinking about the fact that he had received so many compliments. Was this friendly person really so kind without this typical greed of rich dudes? And the young man believed that the way our hero fought, as if he was not afraid of death at all. At this moment, the young man was smiling very broadly. Our hero was amazed by what the guy said. This comparison, of course, scared him very much. It must have been just a metaphor. He is the virus, so until it is completely destroyed, it will not disappear. That was true, of course, but as for medicine, he needed to casually ask about how medicine works in this world. Then our hero asked, saying that many people have been sick lately, asking if the young man was feeling well right in front of him. He reported that recently miasma has been appearing in cities, causing people to get sick. Mana crystals also began to appear, causing misfortune in people, and mineral disease next to them. After hearing about it all, our hero tried to understand what mineral disease and miasma are and what they are. Then he thought about the possibility that this disease is inherent in this world. So far, he could ask a little bit about something else, and therefore the first thing that came to mind was just to ask about viruses. The young man sitting right in front of him heard the word virus, thought for a long time, and then smiling did not understand what it was. He was a little stunned by our hero's question. And then the guy talked about how he had never heard of viruses before and apologized for his ignorance. He had heard that these people did not know what a virus was. Our hero was shocked. After all, the young man in front of him did not seem to him to be a man devoid of education, which meant that the viruses had not yet been discovered. But, on the other hand, maybe there were no viruses other than him in this world at all. Therefore, the young man decided to explain that viruses are crystals that have been discovered recently, minerals or something like that. Then the young man said that everything became clear to him. It's probably a rather strange name. But our hero thought that if viruses do not exist in this world or have not yet been discovered, then he could do whatever he wanted. These soldiers were very good people, the young man thought, looking out of the carriage. And at the moment, any symptom that could be received from people was very valuable. Since he had already infected one of them, he was sure that no one would mind if he acquired a few more. The next moment, releasing virus particles, our hero thought that if he increases the number of viruses, he may have new symptoms. The next moment, symptoms were received, such as basic instincts, evasion, composure, and intuition. Realizing that he had succeeded, our hero thought that now he would have a lot of new opportunities. But that wasn't all he was given. Therefore, in the next moment, he also had latency, deception, cunning, and resistance to poisons. And he wondered if there really were a few disturbing symptoms after hearing all this. Then, turning to Roy, the young man asked if these guys were his subordinates. The guy explained that apart from the coachman, no one else is an employee of the company, they are just mercenaries hired as an escort. Looking at them, it was our hero who eventually saved him. Roy didn't quite understand why he had hired them in the first place. The young man thought that the hired killer was rather suspicious. The next moment, the system was talking about the manifestation of symptoms. Clear thinking, negotiation, persuasion, serenity. The young man understood that this was not all, and looking at these symptoms, he thought that they were very different from soldiers. Then he realized that these symptoms were not generally soldier-like. Looking at the young man who was sitting right in front of him, because in the end, he infected this guy. Our hero had previously opened a window to infect the knights. Therefore, the young man asked if our hero had opened the window because it was stuffy here. Of course, he didn't suspect anything about any viruses or what our hero was doing. It was probably not the best idea to spread the virus in such a confined space. Well, there wasn't much difference between 4 or 5, our hero thought. After all, even the symptoms of a merchant, this skill strip seems to be useful, since in the future he will walk around the city. If you look at it and judging by the symptoms he received, he must have been a successful trader. Perhaps he had become the target of business competitors, so the mercenaries were a little suspicious. If he had to save his life again, our hero would like to receive a reward. After all, this is how he can earn the expenses necessary for his research, right here and now, our hero thought with sparkling eyes. Turning to Roy, our hero wanted to explain about a suspicious guy among the mercenaries. The young man did not listen to him at all, looking out of the carriage. He was thinking that it looked like they were already there. Smiling and glad that the city was right in front of him. After all, as our hero probably knew, it was the city of Faust. Looking out of the carriage, the young man realized that he had already been introduced to this place 2 times. The next moment they got out of the carriage, and Roy apologized and asked to wait for our hero for a minute. After all, the contract with the maintainers is valid only up to this point. Our hero, getting out of the car, thought that these people were really going their separate ways. After all, he was mistaken in believing that this guy's life was in danger. At this moment, our hero was standing and waiting for the young man. Roy, addressing him, apologized for keeping him waiting. He is deeply grateful for saving his life, he would like to give it to him in gratitude. At this moment, our hero thought about what, probably, it was the money that they wanted to offer him. The next moment, there was absolutely no money in front of him, but a card that Roy handed to him, explaining that this card was issued only to special persons in the Valkyrie company. It wasn't exactly what our hero imagined, trying to figure out what he needed to do with her. Then they explained to him that he could use this card to get discounts on products that their company represents when he needs it. Then he could contact Roy and just show them this. Looking at the map of the young men, I thought that it was quite convenient, but if you think about it, he doesn't have any connections yet. Having friends can be even more profitable than just getting money. Addressing Roy, our hero reported that he was new to the city. Therefore, he did not know anyone and said that if he had problems, could he hope for the young man's help. And he, holding out his hand to him, informed him that he would do everything possible for the one who saved his life. Looking at him, our hero thought that this guy was very good. He felt a little guilty for taking advantage of his kindness, but the skills of a merchant would come in handy. He decided that he would take all the skills that this guy possessed. At that moment, they shook hands, and the system reported that new symptoms had been received. The symptoms were such as murder, silence, invisibility, stealth, presence detection, hiding the presence of shadow magic abilities, acting, were also received. Our hero did not expect at all that such a seemingly kind young man had such skills. And then, releasing his hand, Roy informed him that it might seem rude on his part, but still he asked to accept his money. Our hero explained that this was not necessary, explaining that he could not take money for a good deed. And then he suddenly remembered that he had to do something, saying goodbye to the young man. The virus in the goblin's body realized that he was too careless. All these disturbing symptoms that he received, it turns out, belonged to this guy. If he wanted to live a peaceful life, he shouldn't have messed with such people. Roy, looking at him, could not understand because the guy was in this city for the first time. What could be so urgent? Did he really suspect something about it? Roy wondered, looking at our fleeing hero. The merchant understood that this man had several secrets that he did not reveal to anyone. But Roy thought they would get along great because he was looking forward to working with this stranger in the future, Roy said, smiling and leaving. Chapter 7.1 And our hero, who was breathing heavily, decided to sit down a little in the alleys. After all, when he found out that this guy was a murderer, he ran away. But this was not necessary, probably, our hero thought about it after a while. After all, he had already infected this youth, so if it came to a battle, he would definitely have the advantage. But he had never met murderers before, it was absolutely normal to be scared. Sitting in the doorway, he thought that now he was completely exhausted. First of all, he had to explore the city, and maybe he could find a hotel to rest in. Walking through the streets, he realized that it was really another world only. You could look at all these different races that were walking down the street. He was interested to see what symptoms he could get from all these people. At this moment, while he was walking, he was thinking about his own. Someone asked him to wait, addressing the distinguished guests. Looking down, our hero saw a hobbit or a dwarf, or rather someone similar to him. And the man explained that the young man was standing at the entrance to their 3-star establishment in such dirty clothes. Asking if he really wanted to stay here, because he must be joking. Explaining that he doesn't have rooms for a suspicious person like our hero. The next person the young man approached was a humanoid cat, who, upon seeing our hero, explained that really, if he wanted to stay here, he looked very suspicious. Looking at the elf that was in front of him with a cigarette in his mouth. He informed him that our hero could touch here regardless of whether he was as clean as a pigeon or looked like he had just killed someone. But those who can't pay are out of the question. But if our hero wanted to stay here, he needed to have at least some money. After looking at all these people, our hero thought that he just wanted to return to the goblin nest. And so the young man thought that he had no money, but he had something to sell. The man reported that they only accepted cash. The hero thought that the civilized world is really a terrible place to live. That man suddenly reported that in the Adventurers Guild, he could only buy fur from him for money. After hearing about the Adventurers Guild, our hero asked about it. And the man said that if there were rumors that he had allowed him to stay here for free, it would create problems in the future. But if he returns with the money, the man will let him stay, even if a little is not enough. After hearing this, our hero thought about what it means after all, there are good people like this guy. Therefore, our hero, after listening to him, thought that he needed to go to the Adventurers Guild to exchange something so that he would have money. Arriving at the gorgeous building, our hero saw the Adventurers Guild. As he walked inside, he wondered if this building looked like an office. But when he went inside, he saw that everyone in the guild was having fun, and the atmosphere was like in a bar on a Friday night. At this moment, our hero was greeted by a waitress who was serving drinks on the tables. Thus, adventurers who have just received money can leave them here. It was quite a good business move. If he had spread the virus here, he would have received a whole bunch of symptoms. But he thought that maybe it would be better if he did not do anything serious until he had studied the city better, and he thought about it. As he walked through the tavern, he realized that he stood out too much, and all the people were staring at him. Thinking that he just needed to hurry up and exchange the fur for gold in order to leave faster. As he walked through the guild, he thought about where he needed to present it. For the first time here, a friend saw a beautiful older sister, who waved to him, greeting our hero, smiling at him. After greeting her, the young man approached her. The girl asked if he was here for the first time. The young man explained that this was true, but he would like to show the fur. Then the girl asked him to fill out a form for the registration of adventurers. But our hero explained that he was from the village and therefore had no documents. The girl explained that everything was fine. Our hero was very surprised at how quickly she could serve him. The girl explained that the Adventurers Guild operates on the principle of complete meritocracy. Everyone is welcome here, even those who have a special position like our hero, because they have always lacked manpower. Therefore, she asked the young man to introduce himself so that she could register him. After thinking a little, our hero introduced himself as Walker the Parasite. Walker was his English name from his previous life. He thought that parasite was the French way of pronouncing the word parasite. Although the name was just something he came up with on the spot. It sounded quite logical. Thinking that he wasn't exactly a parasite. The girl, issuing the card, reported that it was his 6th grade card, referring to Walker Parasite. It was also his label. If he raised his rank to grade 4, he would be able to conveniently use his card as an identity card. She started talking about how it was quite difficult to work alone, but Mr. Parasite looked pretty strong, so in the blink of an eye he would find a party and be like a beginner with great potential. When he took his card, he thought that it looked like a tag on a dog collar because the card was hanging on a chain. And the girl said, since the young man was here for the first time, she could help him with choosing a quest. Therefore, they could look at which quest to choose for our hero and to start with the F rank, for example, collecting medicinal herbs. The young man also tried E ranks, for example, to collect the horns of a horned rabbit. Our hero, showing the fur, asked if he could sell it first. The girl was very surprised that he had already collected something before registering as an adventurer. Asking about the fact that she knew he had something. Looking at the fur she saw, she said that it just couldn't be. In front of her was Mecha, the S-rank thunder bear that they had asked to kill. Thinking about what really happened, it was his fur. At that moment, everyone in the tavern fell silent and began to whisper about our hero, thinking that he could really defeat the thunder bear. The girl apologized for asking, but how exactly did he get it? Our hero explained that he had killed a gram bear himself, and the next moment he wondered if he had done something wrong. It turned out that it was a monster whose extermination had already been a quest. It was bad, he felt like he had just brought a lot of attention to himself. The girl also said that there was nothing terrible about it was just that the thunder bear was a very strong demonic beast to fight alone. But our hero asked for forgiveness, he was just showing off, and it took 20 people to deal with him, and he wasn't lying because there were about 20 goblins. It was difficult to finish him off, some people died, but they managed to do it. Asking about how it was because he was a beginner with potential. The girl exhaled at that moment and said that it was true because while he was doing quests, their employees would not find out the details. And since he had brought sufficient evidence, there was a reward in front of him for the murder. A bag of gold fell in front of our heroes and everyone stared at it intently. And the young man thought that he was very glad that he managed to sell this fur. After all, as he thought, he still does not know how to communicate with other people, but he stands out too much. He needed to hurry up and get out of here, however, they really didn't bother to get to him to find out the details. This made him wonder if the reason the guild was doing this was because they were accepting people without any documents, and maybe even criminals. The employee seemed to be a kind and sympathetic person, but she also had to be quite qualified because she also had several scars. The girl was fragile, but even if she was wearing clothes, it was still obvious how hard she had been training. He was sure that if he had infected her, he would have developed new symptoms. The girl apologized to our hero, smiling. Then he tried to justify his actions because before that he had been carefully examining the girl. The girl also said that another person is waiting in line. Therefore, he turned around and thought about the fact that he was detaining this man. At this moment, Elena appeared in front of our hero, who was standing behind him and holding a basket with various herbs and plants behind her back. Then she looked at the young man carefully. He absolutely did not expect to see her so quickly, and the girl looked at our hero in surprise. Elena came up from behind and slightly bent down awkwardly asked, "Excuse me, have you finished yet?" Of course. Giving way to her, Walker awkwardly pointed with his hand. A smile lit up the girl's face. "It's amazing, you've slain a thunder bear. Truly admirable. No way, I didn't think I'd meet her here." "Hello." Elena greeted the guild administrator. "She's still working as an adventurer. I have brought the requested herbs." The girl says with a smile. "Good. The quality is excellent, and I see that you have brought a lot. Now." Calling the waitress over, Walker placed an order. "I'll get a beer. Will be soon." "It is wonderful." Elena handed the herbs to the girl at the reception, and Walker sat down on a chair. Walker's thoughts were all visible in his nervous grimace. "I wonder if everything is fine with her? I want to talk to her, but I'm the wolf that helped you before. I would definitely seem like a suspicious person if I said something like that." The girls were chatting about their own things. All these stories from the party. T also, about this. "I'm sorry, but it seems they still don't want to team up with you." Elena drooped slightly, "Okay." Her sadness was visible on her face. So she's still doing it alone. Considering the strength of the adventurers here, it is understandable that she would be considered a burden. The waitress put the beer on the table. "Here you are." "I'm sorry for her, but a guild with such a stormy atmosphere is not a suitable place for a child. I'm sure she's more suited to farm work. It's a good thing I didn't call out to her." Elena began to trudge to the exit of the guild. Walker looks after the departing girl, and now he realizes the beer is already on the table. "How do I drink this?" Two men appear from behind the girl, one of whom slapped Elena on the back and frightened her with his unexpected appearance. "Oh, Elena." "Wah." This surprise struck Walker, she is being recruited. "Hey, stop it. Stop doing unnecessary things." Hajiru-san. Elena's tense face was an indication that she didn't like these people. "Have you found a party yet?" "No," the confused voice of a girl who was surrounded by three unpleasant-looking guys. The girl just wasn't cut out for such a dangerous job. "I'm sorry for you. I can't afford to bring in new members right now. However, this does not mean that I can give up on the dreamer who came here from the village. There was bombast in every one of Hajiru's words. In that case, as I said before, I can offer you another job. Elena flinched at the man's vile tone. I already turned you down last time. The girl staggered back sharply and screamed. Walker was watching from behind. I doubt they're recruiting her at the party. I would love to help her out of this mess, but I want to not stand out as much as possible yet. There are a lot of people here, so someone with a strong sense of justice will help her. And the beer is still standing alone on the table. The men's laughter rang out throughout the guild. Good luck to you, Elena. Won't you earn 10 times more than when picking herbs? You won't have to go back to your village anymore. Even if you want to go home, you probably won't be able to do it. Everyone who was in the guild was laughing and having fun with this situation while drinking their drinks. These people. Why is no one helping her? How unpleasant. Walker clutched his mug. Why not try it at least once? Hajiru grabbed Elena, hugging her to him with one hand. Stop it. Let me go. The girl started screaming and crying to be released. I will become a great adventurer and protect everyone. Walker's memories of their meeting surfaced. Walker let out a tear. Getting up from his chair, Walker said menacingly. The girl doesn't like it. Stop it already. It was unexpected for everyone. Hajiru looked back, PFFT. The man's gaze was haughty. What's the matter with you? What a voice. Your voice sounds disgusting, like a goblin's. An outsider like you should get out if you don't want to get hurt. Gajira stared at Walker with an unkind look. I'm a member of this girl's party. Walker said awkwardly. This surprised Elena very much. Ha. Who in their right mind would become a member of a party with trash like her? Gajira pushed Elena aside. I get it, we're in the same business, right? Someone so useless is only fit to be sold. These words made Elena shed tears of despair again. However, I got to her first. So get it. Hajira raised his fist to strike straight at Walker. Apologize to her. Walker caught Gajira's fist and squeezed it hard. A man is trying to escape from the grip of a strange man in a mask, mentally asking himself various questions. What is this power? Walker squeezes his opponent's fist even harder and harder. No, I am the almighty Hajiru-sama. My strength surpasses everything. Walker squeezes Gajira's fist even harder. Activation of symptoms, generation of magical energy is 1, and electromagnetic discharge is 1. Hajira's body was attacked. Bro. What happened? The man's friends became sharply agitated because of a fallen friend on the ground, who was also crouching in pain. Gajira is still lying on the ground paralyzed by lightning. His friend is looking around thinking. This guy. I thought he was a fighter, but he's actually a lightning magician. However, there's no way I can lose. I'm the fastest caster in the guild. He won't even have time to do anything. The magician casts a spell and is about to strike when suddenly. No. Wait a minute. How he used lightning magic without saying anything. Walker successfully attacks the magician. Lightning successfully paralyzes the magician, causing him to scream in pain. I have the advantage in close combat. The beast man tries to attack in close combat by swinging his blade at Walker. The beast man was surprised. You. What? Have you forgotten what pain is? The beast man pierced Walker's arm with his blade, but Walker clenched his fist. And he punched Tom in his face with all his might. There was a depressing silence in the guild. The three of them were lying unconscious on the floor. Walker is breathing heavily after a good fight. What just happened? How Hajiru lost? I have no idea. Who is this guy? Walker looks around nervously because he didn't seem to want to draw attention to himself so much. Elena looked at her savior in surprise, thinking. This person. Walker and Elena met each other's eyes, and the girl shuddered. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I did something inappropriate. The guy nervously began to justify himself. There were whispers at the reception. And no, I am. The girl tried to say something, but she was interrupted. I think I'll leave. I'm really sorry that I did that. Excuse me. Walker left the place in a hurry. The girl couldn't even really say something. The doors slammed shut, leaving Elena perplexed. The girl was surprised and confused at the same time. Running out after Walker, Elena caught up with him and called out. Wait a minute. I am very grateful for what you have done. The guy was surprised and confused. Therefore. I wanted. Maybe it's shameless of me to ask this, but. If you don't mind. Would you like to create a real party with me? The girl suddenly said this to Walker. You like to create a real team with me? Elena shouted out, which stunned Walker. The girl stared at the guy with hope. What is she talking about? The expressions of his emotions were clearly visible on his mask. That is, I am. Didn't you find it strange? Of course not. You did it to save me. Perhaps my suggestion to create a team seemed annoying to you. Walker was even more stunned by Elena's words. No way. Stretching out his palm, Walker shouted this phrase. It's obvious from the look of you that you're not suitable for. I'm sorry. Walker looked away from the girl's face. Elena just smiled, saying, well, very sorry. But don't worry, I'm used to rejection. I will continue to collect medicinal herbs and look for someone who will agree to take me on the team. I'm sorry to bother you. Stop. You've been through so much, and you still don't think about giving up? Walker began his polemic. Of course. My dream is to become an adventurer, a defender of people. Elena's cheerful smile lit up her face. She's so determined. Walker was perplexed by such a cheerful girl, especially realizing what difficulties she had to go through earlier. I don't know anything about this world. Maybe it's really worth trying to create a team? And no, she wasn't pushing for pity. Right now I need someone I can trust. Walker thought inside himself. Oh, yes, I was just looking for teammates myself. Perhaps I can take you on a trial run, so to speak. With his arms crossed and his head high, Walker began his grandiose speech. But this is still a probation period, so we will split the reward in half. Elena was surprised by the guy's response. And I'm also unlikely to be able to teach you combat skills. Elena opened her mouth in shock, starting to, I'm sorry. I was just surprised. Simply. The surrounding people began to pay attention to this scene. I've always been alone. To be honest, I didn't know what to do. So I'm so glad. The girl wipes her tears with her hand, smiling with such a sincere smile. Although I turned to you, I was ready to refuse. I'm shocked. Thank you very much. Elena bowed slightly to Walker. The guy returned the bow. In my previous life, I was also always steaming and worried. The radiant smile that lit up the girl's face was too bright. You know. Or maybe we'll eat together, in honor of the formation of the team. Tell me about yourself. So. Choose what you want. I'll pay for everything. This is gratitude for the rescue. Elena put the menu on the table and turned it to Walker. It's kind of awkward, considering that I got a lot of money. But since she wants to thank me, I won't object. The waitress came to their table and began to take their order. I'll have the dish of the day, please. And so do I. And yet. I'm sorry I'm late introducing myself. My name is Elena. I'm still a rookie of the 6th rank. And Walker is a parasite, I just became an adventurer. Really? The girl started the conversation first. Elena was very shocked by the fact that Walker had just become an adventurer, as well as the fact that she had been working as an adventurer for much longer. Have you just become an adventurer? And I thought you were already a veteran. You and the Thunder Bear have won. I'm just saying. I grew up deep in the mountains. And just got out into the city, I don't know anything yet. Therefore, in general. I don't know a lot of things, even the obvious ones. Is it okay? And I have my own fighting style, I won't be able to teach it. Walker roughly describes his invented backstory about life in the mountainous wilderness. Oh, rely on me. I'll help you with everything you don't know, and I'll learn the fighting style on the go. The girl fell for the guy's words and answered the guy with a big smile. Elena decided to remember the fight in the guild. You even have magic. Not everyone can learn martial arts and magic on their own. Thanks a lot. Well, yes, magic is a very convenient thing. Walker replied uncertainly to the girl while thinking at the same time. Although it's actually a virus. Perhaps you shouldn't talk about it. A good excuse, by the way, it will be necessary to study magic. The waitress brings their order, sorry for the delay. This is the dish of the day. Wow, it looks delicious. The food really looked extremely appetizing. Oh. For once, normal food. Have a nice app. The mute silence inside Walker. A sharp realization. But I can't take off my helmet. The internal panic was extremely strong. Mr. Parasite. You can't eat with a helmet on. Damn it. I completely forgot. Walker's panic increased. Well. My face is horribly disfigured. That's why I'm talking so clumsily. The excuse was successfully invented. That's it? Excuse me. Yes, it's okay. Then let's ask the waitress to wrap our food with us. Elena called the waitress to her. I'm sorry, you should have told me earlier. No, don't worry. But in general, serious wounds are far from uncommon. Elena tries to comfort her teammate. My village was attacked by hobgoblins, and a lot of people were injured. Most of the residents were elderly. The girl's face darkened. I became an adventurer to become stronger and protect everyone. I will never forgive goblins who do such terrible things. Our hero shuddered at the girl's words. An awkward silence and an oppressive atmosphere. She doesn't even realize that it's a hobgoblin in front of her. Wow. It got so hard, it's like I'm cheating on her. And at all. Since I have decided to communicate with people, I will have to find a normal body for myself. Walker thought about changing his body, and drops of sweat fell from his face. In the meantime, I need to do everything so that this girl doesn't find out that I'm a goblin. Immersed in himself, Walker was stunned by the girl's call. Mr. Parasite. Yes. Thank you very much for agreeing to take on a team as clumsy as me. I am very lucky to have met such a kind person. A smile colored Elena's face again. Yes, no. Thank you for that. I'm so scary. Walker pulled his hood up tight. And yet she is. Grandma always told me. Don't judge a book by its cover. She is very sincere and good, but I am worried that she is so easily deceived. If you distract yourself, she will immediately get into trouble. I have to keep an eye on her. Elena holds out a paper bag with food. Here, this is your portion. Eat at the hotel later, okay? Thank you. Two people came out of the tavern. Let me walk you to your hotel. You never know if those guys will come back. And I'm sorry, I acted rashly. Hee. Elena and Walker went together to the hotel where the girl lives. After Elena's chuckle, Walker looked questioningly at the girl. You might not believe it. But recently a gray wolf saved me in the forest and also escorted me to the city. Elena remembered the little wolf that had saved her before. Walker flinched at the mention of his past appearance. That's what it all reminded me of. Wow. But do monsters do that? It's true. We found a common language. What if I have a talent for controlling monsters? Elena said in surprise. In any case, tomorrow will be our first team work. So eat well and get some sleep. Walker stated this. The girl's eyes shone like stars saying so. The first quest in the team Although of course I'm afraid, because this will be the first experience for us. But a few such joint missions and we will learn how to work as a team. Yes. It's been a long time since I've worked with someone like that. It's a pretty good feeling. Walker and Elena were walking and chatting about their own. Early in the morning, Elena's voice is heard in the hotel. Mr. Parasite, good morning. Walker is snoring in his bed. Mr. Parasite? Walker opens his eyes abruptly. Damn it, it's Elena. Jumping out of bed, he realizes that his newly minted teammate is calling him. Mr. Parasite, aren't you staying at this hotel? Elena is standing under the windows of the hotel and trying to get through to Walker. We agreed to meet at the Adventurers Guild. And she came here, and a whole hour earlier. That's the zeal. The parasite was extremely surprised by such pressure and zeal of the girl. Oh, are you the innkeeper? Tell me, is there a guest here named Walker Parasite? Yeah, he's in a room on the second floor. Walker started packing as soon as possible, putting on his clothes. Whoa. No privacy in this place. It's bad, I need to change my clothes quickly. The parasite managed to get dressed in time and run out of his room. He had just opened the door by the time Elena went up the stairs. Good morning, Lena. And how did you find me? Mr. Parasite, good morning. Lena, as always, with her radiant smile on her face. I just asked passers-by about a big man in a raincoat and a bird mask and immediately found out everything. The girl's face was glowing with happiness. Ooh. And yet this body attracts too much attention. I need to find a new one for myself, otherwise she will reveal me sooner or later. Walker's awkward reflection. Mr. Parasite, you know. What? The guy was alarmed. Elena looks sad. Are you sure you haven't changed your mind about the team? The girl is extremely concerned about this. And of course not. I just went out into the city myself, you just saved me. The guy was confused by the girl's words. Today is our first job as a team. It's time to move out. Walker declared enthusiastically. Yes. The girl's face was once again colored by her cheerful smile. A busy market, the hubbub of people in the early morning. I didn't have time to walk around the city before. Wow, there are so many things I don't. Well, I have a lot of money. The parasite thought. Yes, give me one piece. Walker holds out a coin. Mr. Parasite, wait. Elena stopped Walker from making such a purchase, shocking everyone. 10 silvers is twice as expensive as usual. Elena objected to the saleswoman and she shuddered. Aha. Well, I didn't say there was only one portion. 2 servings for 10 silver pieces. The saleswoman began to back down. That's how. Then let's have 2. The saleswoman clucked with displeasure because her scam failed, but Elena was extremely pleased with her victory. Mr. Parasite. Scammers immediately break the price at the sight of non-residents, so do not trust every seller. Lena was extremely cheerful explaining to Walker about scammers and non-residents. That's who would say. But I'd rather not say anything. I see you understand everyday things. Thanks. Hee, of course. Unlike you, I didn't start earning money right away. Paradise was extremely delighted with this fact. There was a time when I only ate herbs, mostly weeds. Lena recalls her difficult past as she ate plants. We need to collect as much as we ordered. But then why did you buy me a meal? It's okay. After all, I have saved up money just for such cases. What a kind girl. The parasite even burst into tears inside. I really want to complete the task as soon as possible and feed her delicious food. Walker was deeply flattered by the sincerity of Elena's actions. Alright, let's go to the guild for a task. And as soon as we get the reward, we'll walk around the market again. Yeah. Parasite and Lena drink their drinks from Kagaram. And yet you are. It is so easy to be deceived that I am worried. The girl of the parasite was shocked by these words. I'll keep an eye on you so that this doesn't happen. Elena is extremely excited. Thanks. Actually, we're both good. Walker and Lena went on to the guild, the girl said so, trust me. And the guild. What? The receptionist is shocked. Elena. Did you team up with him? Agas. Lena answered happily. Of course, he looks a little peculiar, but believe me, his heart is the kindest. You saw for yourself how he saved me. Well, yes. The girl at the reception looked at the parasite awkwardly. She suspects me. The girl thought about it while looking at the parasite. And yesterday I seemed to attract so much attention that now everyone is looking at me. The people in the guild were staring at Walker intently. Do you have a task for 2 novice adventurers? And I thought that you would even complete an S-rank task easily. You defeated the Thunder Bear alone, didn't you? The girl stared at Walker. I want to accept a task that will benefit Elena's training. Walker pointed at Lena. I see. Well then. How do you like the F-rank task of hunting horned rabbits? The receptionist girl looks at the papers in order to choose a task for this too. The horns of these rabbits are suitable for making jewelry, so they are asked to collect them. They are small and act alone, which is not typical for rabbits. So this is the perfect assignment for novice adventurers. We will try our best. Lena was already on fire. Yeah. Great, then we'll take this assignment. If anything, I'll support her, don't worry. Walker said confidently. Actually, I'm most worried that you're going with her. The administrator spoke to Paradise in her mind. Elena, be extremely careful. Yes. The girl shook Elena's hands and gave parting words. She probably thinks I'm just like those bandits. What to do? The first impression always spoils everything. But I will faithfully complete the task and win her trust. They are found here somewhere. But they are not visible. The rustle of the trees echoes through the forest. The team of Parasite and Elena are looking for horned rabbits in their habitat. We've been looking for them for an hour. Are they really that hard to find? Walker was confused, but Lena was rummaging around in the bushes nearby. No, these monsters usually appear right away. Maybe they became more careful because goblins, their dangerous enemies, were passing by. Shock pierced a Parasite. Is this my fault? Sweat poured down the guy's face. I can't let the first task fail because of me. Walker was on edge. Elena, if it's such a child, I'll find them with magic. Oh, okay. But it's dangerous, step back. Will you find them like this? So? It looks like I can use the symptoms I get from that merchant as well. The parasite started using its virus to search for monsters. Hiding the presence of 2. Detecting the presence of 1. Activation. Walker uses his powers. I've eliminated the goblin's aura. And now I will find the aura of living beings. Silence. And now the parasite discovers something behind a lying log.